Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday, May the 3rd. I thought I'd do a little change of scenery today. This is the fourth video I've actually made today. So, you're going to see quite the same outfit in the last four videos. And, well, it looks like I'm going back and forth between videos. So, it's going to be tournament video, something else, tournament video, etc. So I'm going to try and keep that pattern going. That way I get to mix in some of my other video ideas in with the tournament, and it doesn't have to be, a straight, tournament like I did kind of, with the Hasbro and, LJN and whatnot. So, get to keep things fresh and whatnot. Plus, I've been pretty much posting videos every single day too, so that helps as well. And like I said, when I started posting almost on a daily basis back in March, like I said, guys, I pretty much had like a million ideas. So when I was like posting like every 3 days back in 2022, if I was still doing that this year, I'd be going crazy right now, because I would probably have about 100 videos in queue right now. I would be so backed up, and it'd be driving me nuts. And I'd still be making videos, so I'd be even more backlogged. So the idea to post a video as I make them. Now, I'm not actually doing what I plan to do. Like, if I made a video today, the idea was to post the video today. I'm not actually doing that, but I mean, at least I'm getting it out relatively quickly, so that's definitely helping. But anyways, back to the tournament. We are returning to the tag team tournament. I do have a handful of names remaining. So we are going to do 4 matches as we return to the next set of competition. Alright, so it looks like the first matchup is going to feature Ram Treasure's Demolition Tag Team, which is going to square off against the... Okay. So this is going to be the second set of 4 horsemen. This is going to be the Ram Treasures Galoob 2-Up, Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. Alright, this is going to be the Rhythm and Blues Custom Tag Team. And they are going to square off against... Let's see, Dudes with Attitude. Dudes with Attitude. I'm trying to think who Dudes with Attitude was. Okay, gotcha. Now I'm remembering now. All right, next tag team, Hogan and Hillbilly. They're gonna square off against Money Inc. And the last matchup is gonna feature the original LJN British Bulldogs, as they will square off against the Random Treasures version of Powers of Pain. Alright, so I will pull those figures, and I will be back momentarily. Alright, folks, I am back with the 4 matches for this video. And the first matches we were looking at was going to feature from Random Treasures. Both sets are the 4 Horsemen, which features Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, squaring off against Demolition. Now, for starters, we've got Demolition from Ram Treasures, which we already know right off the bat. Demolition, to me, one of my all-time favorite tag teams, period. Demolition Axe. They changed his face from the original, from the red demonic face, which I really love from the original. But that red or silver face, that's more common to what I kind of grew up remembering, especially more to like the Hasbro Series 1 version axe. So I really like that. Smash, again, kind of like the Series 1 Hasbro version. And I really like when customizers or anyone like that kind of creates color schemes based on the Hasbro figures, because again, Hasbro is what I grew up with. That's what I'm familiar with, and that's what I love and enjoy. The Demolition, they're probably a top 5 all-time favorite tag team for me. Nostalgia, huge important role in this matchup right here. Downside, based on the figures, what are we looking at? What are those poses good for? Holding championship belts. That is it. These are incredible pieces aesthetically for display, but as far as wrestling, they are despicable pieces. I get it. The original Axe figure had his arm up like so. So, very custom or very seen by Ram Treasures. They like to mirror their figures when they create tag teams. So when they created Smash, what did they do? They mirrored the figure. I hate that. They should have done like what they did with the Legion of Doom and created a completely different figure. And it sucks. Not trashy, it's not a garbage figure. I still rate the Smash figure as like, I don't know where I put him, like number 3 or something, 3 or 4 on my list of all-time favorite random treasure figures. But it kind of kills it, the overall figure, because of that pose. But still, it's a great piece. Love Demolition. One of the most perfect tag teams of all time. Great figures. And also from Ram Treasures, you got the Galoob 2-ups of Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. And what do we call them? The Four Horsemen, or part of the Four Horsemen faction, always led by Ric Flair. So it always seems like Flair and, well, especially Flair, but it always seems like Ric Flair and Arn Anderson are always part of that faction. But there's like 1 million people in that faction, so Four Horsemen doesn't ever seem to work, because Chris Benoit, Brian Pillman, Sid Vicious, Ole Anderson, I mean, who am I missing? Barry Windham. They got like 1 million. Lex Luger. They got like 1 million people who've appeared in that faction as part of the Four Horsemen. So, when I bought this off of Ram Treasure's website, because this was the stock photo, of course that's what I went with. But I immediately regretted it, because when I was buying these figures, I wanted all the figures to be based off of the Series 1 Galoob display. But ever since then, since I already messed up with this, I kind of changed the colors of a couple other figures. For example, with the Ron Simmons figure that you saw in the first video, instead of going with the regular Ron Simmons figure from Series 1, I decided to give it a Series 2 UK exclusive paint scheme with bright blue pants and a white stripe. And you'll see the same, similar thing with Lex Luger later on. So, Arn Anderson, I think it's like AWA or something, color scheme, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not familiar with AWA. I've been putting off the AWA Remco reviews because, again, I don't really have that familiarity. But anyways, that's a discussion for another time. The one thing that I think this tag team does have over Demolition is nostalgia. I had the Ric Flair Galoob figure as a kid. It was probably one of the more commonly used Galoob figures. And Ric Flair and the Rick Steiner Galoob figure were probably the most played with outside of Sid Vicious. I always said that the Ric Flair was a good figure, but that's because look at the other figures that you had to play with. I mean, Ron Simmons, are you kidding me? I said Scott Steiner was good, but was it? Not really. In reality, the Ric Flair figure is probably a 4 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10. I mean, it's not a great figure. I mean, the way that he's kind of hunched over, arms down low, he's basically a punch-only figure. He can't really do a body slam or anything. It's just not a very fun figure for play. Obviously, blown up to LJN size, and given rubber texture and being able to move, you could do a lot more things with this figure that you couldn't do with the hardened Galoob figure. So I'd be really interested in to see what a lot of folks out there could do with this in actual wrestling matches. So Arn Anderson, he's a character I never knew about until a couple years ago. Same, which is a very common theme with a lot of the Gloop figures. There were maybe like 5 or 6 figures I had as a kid. Ric Flair, both Steiner brothers, Ron Simmons, Brian Pillman. So that's 5. And I think that's it. I'm trying to think if there was anyone else. Let me look at the wall over here. Lex Luger. Lex Luger was number 6. Yep, I'm looking at my carded figures on the wall. So we had 6 figures. 6 Gloops. I just don't see a way possible where I could potentially push these guys forward. Neither one of them deserves. I mean, as far as playable figures, they're not. I mean, is Arn Anderson a good figure? No. Is it a playable figure? No. Does he look good? No. I mean, all in all, they're both 4 out of 10s. I mean, they gave him a bald spot. That's okay. I mean, some of the figures, like from Gloop, he had a bald spot on some of them. Some of them he had hair filled in. It depends on which variant you get. So, figure-wise, Demolition crushes them. Playability-wise, I have to give these figures the most minuscule edge over Demolition. As far as nostalgia and, my history, I mean, I care about Demolition far more than Ric Flair, and I just don't have enough history or knowledge of Arn Anderson to really care or have an opinion about the characters. So, yeah, I mean, Demolition, I think it comes down to it. Something like the Rockers, Bushwhackers, who have already been eliminated, Legion of Doom, Demolition, and I think maybe not Powers of Pain, Mega Man X are a good team. Mega Powers, definitely. I mean, those are like teams that are a team that I can really gravitate towards. Higher Foundation, sure. So those are really my front runners, I would say, coming into this competition. So for fans of Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, and I'm sorry, but they're out in the first round. And Demolition does move on to round 2. The next matchup is going to feature Dudes with Attitude against Rhythm and Blues. Again, from the Random Treasures Gloop 2-Up line. Features Sting and Lex Luger. So, once again, because I had already messed up the Arn Anderson by not selecting the red and white mixed colors, when I got I got Doom at the same time. I got both figures, and I decided to go with, I decided to get the UK exclusive for Ron Simmons. And then later on, when I bought Abdullah the Butcher, at that time, I decided to buy 2 figures. So I bought Abdullah the Butcher and I bought Lex Luger. Ron Simmons and Lex Luger. Possibly 2 of the worst action figures ever created. The only reason I bought those figures, again, is because I figured, you know what? Even though I despise the figures, they're part of the Gloop 2-Ups. So I might as well at least keep... I already know they're terrible. I already knew they were coming. And I already made up my mind that I was going to acquire them when it came out eventually. So, so I was going to purchase those. I haven't been excited about other, Ram Treasure figures because I thought when Abdullah the Butcher came out that they had, righted their wrongs or righted the ship, but no. But Lex Luger, I kind of went the same route as I did with Ron Simmons, and decided to go with the UK exclusive Series 2 color scheme with the green and yellow. And if they come out with Brian Pillman eventually, I'm going to do the same thing with the blue. I like the Bengal color. I thought I liked the Bengal color better, but I just think the blue is going to look better. So, dude's attitude. I don't like either of these figures. Absolutely love Sting. I think he is one of the greatest wrestlers. Back in the early mid '90s, you get those old Coliseum videos. Best of Hulk Hogan. Best of Sting. And we'd buy the heck out of those videos. Why? Because you're talking about the biggest stars of their respective brand. And even though we didn't really watch a lot of WCW, best believe we got a lot of home videos, and that's how we got a lot of knowledge of Sting. And that's why, I think that's why I got a lot of strap matches in my mind. Not necessarily from watching it off of TV, but maybe I got it from watching those home videos and him and Vader engaging in those in battle, and him and Ric Flair. And what was very common, he'd get Ric Flair up like this, and do a little thing, and the way that Ric Flair kind of bounce up, and I don't know, I don't think Ric Flair would have made a very good actor, because he just like oversold, kind of like Jim Carrey or something, overactor or something. Not a good pose. Same thing with like the Macho Man from LJN. With the arms up like that, it's not a fun figure for play. I didn't have this as a kid. I wouldn't have enjoyed it. I had the blue trunk Lex Luger as a kid, despised it, used it, but I mean, we didn't have anything else, so what else could you do? Two terrible figures. Didn't know anything about two dudes with attitude or dudes with attitude. Who cares? Couldn't imagine doing anything with these guys themselves. Do they move on to the next round? Maybe. Rhythm and Blues. I know more about these guys as individual runs, not so much as a tag team. Yeah, I can definitely remember Greg Valentine coming to the ring with black hair. Even to this day, that stuff does not sit well with me. He just looks so freaking odd. As a kid, I watched that. I'm like, ew. As an adult and rehashing that and just thinking back on those days, no, it just looks so weird. At least for me, it works. Not so much for me. Greg Valentine, I love the blonde hair in the guy. Black hair for him, he just looked so out of his element. Hair color change works for some people. I just didn't feel like it worked for him in particular. He looked great as a blonde, as a brunette. I love brunettes, but again, I just didn't think it worked for him. Honky Tonk Man, I really enjoyed his gimmick as the Elvis impersonator and everything. Do I buy Greg Valentine as like an Elvis-esque type? Not really. I really love this figure. This one actually beat my original Greg Valentine in my last LJN tournament. And even though I still had Greg Valentine in that tournament, just losing that original version in the very first round kind of killed me, because the original went so deep in my very first LJN tournament. But this one with the built-on jacket and everything, I actually thought this was a legitimate finalist contender. At least a semi-finalist, Blast 4 type of deal. So, Honky Tonk Man, I decided not to go with not with the Raider Nation version. I decided to go with the blue jumpsuit. I just felt like these two meshed well better than what Raider Nation had as far as color scheme goes. Two beautiful figures. As individual wrestlers, they were splendid. As a tag team, did they work well together? I honestly don't remember them as a tag team. But I do remember them as individuals, and they were perfect. To be honest, I really don't care about Lex Luger as a wrestler. Sorry, Lex, but even as a good guy, Mr. America back in the day of body slamming Yokozuna, I just didn't care too much. As much as I love Sting, I respect the hell out of Sting. When everyone was like jumping ship and going for the money and coming to the WWF, he stayed with WCW. That's loyalty right there. To me, I think I have more respect for Sting than probably any other wrestler ever, because of that aspect. But again, I will keep rehashing it. This tournament is just about as much about the figures than anything else. So, yeah, I have to choose Rhythm and Blues over a tag team I really don't know anything about or really care about, I guess. Sorry, Sting. Sorry, Lex, but it is what it is. Rhythm and Blues moves on to round 2. Alright. Oh, lost the championship out. Alrighty. Now, this next one is really going to be tough. So, it's going to feature the original tandem of Hillbilly Jim and Hulk Hogan as they square off against Wrestling Writers' version of Money Incorporated. Now, again, maybe not his best work. I think the $1 Million Man is probably my favorite version of all of the $1 Million Man figures that I own. The IRS figure is an incredible piece. I absolutely love this figure. I think this one, it goes about probably a second rounder usually. Maybe a third rounder depending on who he faces, but not a serious contender to win the competition. It's a good figure, but again, just not a legitimate contender for my favorite figure. Whereas the $1 Million Man legitimately is, like a, 4th, 5th round type of deal. But the problem is in this particular matchup, any battle that features a Hulk Hogan in it, I just don't see how you can overtake a Hulk Hogan and potentially lose that. I had very little memory of Hillbilly Jim. Not until I actually went back and watched an old video, an interview where Macho Man Randy Savage was on the big screen, and like Hillbilly Jim and Bobby Heenan, Mr. Perfect, Vince McMahon, they're kind of like sitting around a round table, and Macho Man had to talk about like selecting a teammate to square off against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon for a tag team championship, and he was talking about selecting the perfect partner. And at that time, Hillbilly Jim, he was one of, the analysts. At that point, that's when I actually remembered, Hillbilly Jim. Because I didn't actually grow up, or I didn't actually remember him really at that moment. And I'm sorry, guys. I had an interruption, so I had to pause the video kind of mid-thought, mid-sentence. So I don't even remember where I left off. I really hate when that happens. So I might have to backtrack just a little bit and kind of recap where I was. So, at one point, I was talking about Ted DiBiase, and he probably was the most important bad guy in my life growing up. And such an important, to think that a bad guy played such an integral part of your life. I mean, he was such a phenomenal wrestler. Like, you would think, like, Andre the Giant was like that integral, bad guy, in the late 80s and whatnot. But, I remember Andre the Giant actually being good. And it was like such a heartbreaking moment learning of, him turning to the other side. But at the same time, Andre the Giant was like, a headbutt and slap guy. And he was very immobile. And like most of his matches that I can remember, even going back now and like watching old videos and stuff, they were like really boring because at that point in his life, health wise, back problems and whatnot, he was pretty much at the latter stages of his life and pretty much couldn't do pretty much anything in the ring anymore. And even when WrestleMania 3 happened in '87 and Hulk Hogan, body slammed him, I don't know what they were thinking, letting anybody pick him up and slam him, with his injuries and stuff. But Ted DiBiase was a fantastic, heel, an incredible wrestler, and I didn't know about, IRS prior to this gimmick, but I always enjoyed him. I always thought he was an enjoyable, wrestler, and the whole little gimmick, going after tax frauds and stuff like that. I just thought that these two guys, bled so well together, blended it so well. So, but at the same time, Hillbilly Jim, and I think that's where I left off, is talking about remembering Hillbilly Jim and Macho Man. So even though I didn't remember Hillbilly Jim, not until I saw that Macho Man video where he was selecting the perfect partner. And I've talked about my love for this particular action figure. It is such a simple piece. Like, he's just basically a farmer, essentially. A farmer in his coveralls with his little farmer hat. And this is probably the most utilized figure for customization. People will chop this figure up like crazy. They'll chop off his arms, chop off his limbs, his torso, cut off his head, use it for other, figures, and I hate that. I don't like having these figures, tore up, because once they're gone, they're gone. I can understand if something is, beyond repair or beyond salvaging, to find ways to save it or make it better. Like, if this figure was completely destroyed to the point where, like, it's, paint loss was over 75% of the body and you needed to repaint it, customize it that way, I understand that's fine. But like, if you were to take a figure like this, no, I wouldn't touch a figure like this. This is a great figure, and any match, any team up that features Hulk Hogan, especially a Series 1 Hulk Hogan, which is already a perfect figure, it's really hard. I've never seen these two fight together. I can't even remember seeing Hillbilly Jim wrestle. I think I may have seen him wrestle on like a Battle Royal maybe. And there's so many people in the ring that I don't even remember him actually doing anything in there. So it's tough. I don't foresee these two guys winning the tournament. Could these two together make it very far in this tournament? Absolutely. Man, I gotta stop dropping this guy's head. But at the same time, these two guys could also go very, very far in this tournament and possibly has a more legitimate chance of actually winning than these two. I mean, Hulk Hogan's already on, 2 other teams right now? Could you imagine if there was like a 3-man finals again, and you have a 3 different Hulk Hogan teams in the finals? It would be nice to have some kind of separation. I love the figures. The $1 Million Man figure in particular is absolutely special. But sometimes originality does beat out customs, even though I really appreciate my customs. Like I said, I just can't pass up a Hulk Hogan figure, especially the Series 1, man. It's just so incredible. These two together, I think this is just a great set together. They work really well. Does it win the tournament? I'd say maybe a 15% chance of winning. So odds aren't with them, but it, again, it's not so much about winning the tournament. It's about, the process of getting there. All right. And the very last matchup is going to feature original British Bulldogs squaring off against Random Treasures Powers of Pain. So we'll start off with Powers of Pain with the Warlord figure and Barbarian. I know what you're thinking. Wait, that's an original LJN Warlord. But when you look at the feet, it's not. This one was actually purchased from Ram Treasures. So I talked about before, outside of the Series 6 Andre the Giant, at one point every Series 6 figure I did own at one point was Ram Treasures. Before I went out and actually acquired all of the original figures. I mean, heck, since then, I probably acquired like 3 or 4 different original Warlords, like 3 different original Warriors, like 3 different original Boss Man. Yeah, man, I've got all those figures like in mass quantities. But yeah, since this is ever since I got the original Warlord in, I keep all those original figures with the original line, and I keep all of the figures that I bought from Random Treasures with the Random Treasures line. So I will keep these figures, the Powers of Pain, together. Right off the bat, they're pretty much identical figures for the most part. They do spread out the arms a little bit. Kind of reminds me of like the Crush from like Series 7 of Hasbro, or your Series 11 Crush, or Series 11 Atom Bomb, or something like that, where like right arm is in a little bit, but then the left arm is out a little bit more. I don't know. I've been asking, I asked Ram Treasures last year if they're ever going to make the Faces of Crush, the 3 Faces of Crush, talking about the Hasbro versions, and they said it was possible. They never got back to me, never said anything about it, so that's why I reached out to Wrestling Writer and asked him to make them for me. And, he always does better work anyways, so, I'm perfectly... And he's going to, charge me a whole lot less than what Ram Treasure would charge me, so, yeah. Better price and much better quality figures. So, I don't know why I'd even go that route anyways. Anyways, Powers of Pain, I kind of remember them as a kid. Warlord a lot better than Barbarian. I don't really remember them too much as far as its individual wrestling. Like, I always remember them as like Royal Rumble contestants. Warlord, I obviously remember him a little bit better because always with the face mask and the little Warlord staff coming down the aisle. Hasbro. It's always dealing with Hasbro. Pretty much anyone that you would see in the Hasbro line, that's why I can remember. So, great figure. I mean, among the LJN line, he's a top 10 figure for me. So, this is what's tough about this particular matchup. The Davey Boy Smith LJN, or Davey Boy Smith in general, is one of the greatest wrestlers in history. I've already said this in the first video. The British Bulldogs LJN is quite possibly one of the worst figures of the LJN line. With the one arm up, I despise it. I am not a fan of these figures. Color scheme wise, they're not bad. I mean, they're not better than the Robert Jackson customs that I pushed forward to round 2. So even if these guys don't, you know, don't push forward, you still got British Bulldogs moving onward. So it's not like it's gonna hamper the Bulldogs' chances of winning the tournament or anything. But it would be nice to have original figures and, you know, give Bulldogs 2 chances to move on in the competition. They're nice figures. Great to have them for part of the collection. Dynamite Kid, I've become a huge fan of his based on, you know, his, you know, acrobatics in the ring. But as a high flyer, he's absolutely amazing. Davey Boy Smith, though, he's everything that you want in a wrestler, man. He's just godsend. But how do you put 2 terrible poses up against 2 incredible poses? It's these guys. What I talk about with the tag teams, talking about legitimate tag teams. Not even talking about the figures. Talking about powerhouses of tag teams, real life powerhouses, and teams I've talked about include Typhoon and Earthquake, you know, natural disasters, you know, Hawk and Animal from Legion of Doom, you know, Hogan and Savage, you know, the, you know, Mega Powers to me will always be the premier powerhouse team. But these guys always feel like they should measure like right up there. They just look like brute force. They look like enforcers. And I don't know if these were like ever like Bobby Heenan type, you know, if they were ever managed by Bobby Heenan, but they should have been. Because I always feel like Bobby Heenan was like you know, general manager or owner of like the Yankees or something. Like he always had like the greatest talent in the world under his control. So yeah, Powers of Pain. I mean, they got to move forward, right? I mean, there's just no way around it. I just cannot find a way to push the Bulldogs forward. There's a Powers of Pain customs were already removed, and there's already been a custom British Bulldog tag team that's already moved forward. So, you know, it balances itself out. So, Powers of Pain in, Bulldogs are out. Alright, so that's going to be it for today's video. Sorry about pausing mid-video and kind of cutting myself off and forgetting, you know, where I left off, where I was in a thought process, but, you know, it happens. It happens more often than not, unfortunately, more times than not. Everybody, as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.